Well, with all the success achieved in grade schools aimed at attending college, there are some critics who say going to college doesn't always pay off. Our guest, Jeffrey Selingo, explores this case in his book, College Unbound, The Future of Higher Education and What It Means for Students. Jeffrey is also the editor-at-large of the Chronicle of Higher Education. Jeff, thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
This almost seems outrageous. When I was growing up, the effort of every parent I knew, including my own, was to get me into, through, and out of college because that was the key to success. And you're saying not necessarily.
Well, it's still the key to success. The problem is that most people years ago used to go to any college at any cost. And now the question is, with college prices continuing to climb much higher than almost anything else in the economy, the question is it really worth going to any college at any cost?
And so what has changed to even bring this question up for our students today?
Well, I think the biggest issue is that half of the students who start college don't finish college. And so most parents want to know, if I'm going to spend that much money to send my kids to college, are they actually going to complete? Because getting a college degree is actually about getting the degree, not just getting a bunch of credits, dropping out, and also being in debt when you drop out.
Well, but
it renders you speechless.
It really does, because the idea that I can not go to college, and I know that there are some success cases. Right. There's
Bill
Zuckerberg, there's Bill Gates. But the reality is, employers, are they not looking for, at a minimum, that bachelor's degree?
They are, but I think the problem is that most kids are going to college at 18 when they're not quite ready for it. And so I advocate that we need to have more alternative pathways to college. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't go to college, but perhaps you take a gap year, like they have in Great Britain. Perhaps you'd go on to apprenticeships, like they have in Germany, or expand national service. So I met a number of students in researching the book that took a year off or 2 years off and did AmeriCorps. They learned to work with others. They learned to work with their hands. They got up at 8 o'clock in the morning, which you never do in college, and they actually did work. And so, and that experience matured them. It got them ready. It made them realize what they wanted out of life. And then when they went to college, they were ready for it. Because what happens is all these other students go to college and they're not quite ready for it, and that's why they end up dropping out.
I do think, though, that on some level that there's probably cultural, if not regional, differences in that approach, because I can't imagine coming from, for example, my single-parent household, my minority household, the idea of telling my mother, you know, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go travel around Europe. One, couldn't afford to do it. Two, she would have thought I was crazy. And three, if I'm not in school, then I better be working. So is that also a difference that you see in certain types of households?
Well, I think it's a cultural problem across the board, right? Especially with lower income households, because the idea is that you go to college to get ahead. And the problem is that not only do we not have these experiences, but when we do have the experiences, they're very expensive to do. So even to go and do AmeriCorps for a year requires you to have some resources in order to do that, because you don't get paid much money to do it. And so we need experiences that allow students to earn money, to work while they're earning credit and while they're getting real life experience.
Yeah, and I guess
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, you mentioned earlier about Europe, for example, and the education system there. What I think is interesting about this Oklahoma schooling, this billionaire that's doing this, is that some of the formative education, I find that even in Europe and in India and other countries, the education that's at the high school level is actually at what we're experiencing in college level here. So perhaps what we might want to consider is, in fact, exactly what this billionaire is doing, strengthening our core education until the age of 17, 18. And then what they do in Europe is they go straight to graduate school. They go straight to law school. They go straight to medical school or journalism school, the specialties, skipping college, so to speak. And while we're on that topic, JD MBA, and I tell you, tons of debt, but literally I'm making the same money as someone that just probably graduated college or got out of high school with a PR job at a corporate entity. So,
and that's probably part of the point that you're making.
Well, I mean,
it's not always worth
that
it.
students and parents need to know what the return on investment is going to be.
Right.
You know, if you're going to go to a college and major in something and you're not going to get that return, especially if they're asking you to go deep into debt, you need to realize that before you sign that check.
And the truth is that times have changed. They're not the same as they were, 30 years ago when I was considering going to college, and I can't believe I said that out loud. But you talked a little bit about what you call 5 disruptive forces that will change higher education forever. Go through those and tell us about them.
So the first one is that most colleges have a lot of debt. So we think of students having debt. Actually, the amount of debt at colleges has doubled over the last decade. Building those climbing walls, the lazy rivers, the gyms, the dining halls, the dorms, all that cost a lot of money. The second is states are getting out of the business of higher education. Public higher education in the country is at its lowest level in terms of funding in 2 generations because of that. 3, fewer students can pay the full bill. The alternatives are improving. Is number 4. So everything from the Khan Academy to the massively online open courses being offered by Harvard and Stanford, much better. And then finally, there's this value gap in the country. If you go and ask a college professor, do you think the education at your institution is worth it? They say, sure. You ask the parents of the students at that college, they say, no, it's not. There's a gap between the people running our institutions and the people going to them in terms of what they think the value of that higher education is.
I wonder what you think about Peter Thiel, who has a completely different approach. He pays students to not go to college at all and sort of explore their creativity.
Terrible, I think it's a terrible idea.
Tell us what you really think.
The problem is that everybody wants to be in the, every basketball star in high school wants to be in the NBA, every football star wants to be in the NFL. How many actually make it, right? Yes, we can all show these examples of Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs dropped out of college and they ended up being billionaires founding these great companies. It happens to so few people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then what? So for the student now that's coming up, say, into high school, where they really need to begin to think about what they want to do with their future, if they're not sure, is it best that they wait and delay college until they are sure?
I think that they should look for experiences, though, where they can actually be doing real work, right? So don't work just down at the local Starbucks, right? Work in jobs where you can actually learn real skills, I think, is number 1. Number 2, focus less on the major. I encourage students to go and explore a little bit of college, try to figure out what you want to do, and then get into your major. You still could complete in 4 years, but I think there's so much focus now on getting into a major, and then students 2 or 3 years later say, oh, I'm kind of bored with this. Right. Plus, the economy is changing so quickly. Right. We're not quite sure that the jobs of today are even going to be here in 5 years.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot to consider. Your book, again, is College Unbound, The Future of Higher Education and What It Means for Students. A must-read for parents of teenagers, absolutely.
Great.
Jeffrey Selingo, thank you very much.
Great to be here. Thank you.